So today morning, how we were talking about different forms of leadership and different topics about how we perceive ourselves in in positions where uh, it's seen to be okay. These are the positions of power. These are the positions of leaders, and how do women have shown up in those different positions of power and leadership. But as a woman, what does it really look like, feel like through our own experiences of those places and positions, and how it has happened in our own life journeys. So that was one of the questions. And yeah, and I really like the bit where you were talking about it, that how you have the background, where you come from an academic background, all of that, and your own journey of looking at it differently.
Yeah, so my academic background is that I was doing a PhD at Oxford, which I quit, and then I stayed at home, and I decided to become a mom. So one of my pet peeves over the last, so Neha's 18, so let's see, at least for the last 15 years, it was a choice to be at home with the children and be available for them. And in the middle, it's not like I didn't work. So in the middle, I'd gone back to school for Montessori training. After that, I worked as well. And so one of my pet peeves has been around, and difficulties, and something that is triggering for me is around this whole notion that because I went to Oxford and I didn't pursue that, so everything is a waste. So I know that there are people in the family, in my extended family, or even in amongst women in positions of leadership also, but also in positions where they're working, they're professionals, working professionals. There's this sense of urgency, or this sense of desperation. This is I don't know what it is exactly, but there's this edge. So when I'm speaking, okay, so there's two aspects. One is that मुझे खुद ही लग रहा है कि मैंने I undersold myself, और एक ऐसे लग रहा है कि I don't feel that way, and I'm picking up in something from the outside, which isn't necessarily mine, right? So I think there's a bit of both, but it's been a difficulty कि मतलब this is a choice, but I don't myself recognize enough what my contribution is to the raising of children, and what it means in the world, because it's an unpaid job. It's not paid. There's no, and oftentimes this, so if I look at it in TA terminology, there's a stroke bucket, right? So each of us needs strokes for what we do, and there aren't enough strokes for this kind of work, both things. And I don't give them to myself either. I don't know if I'm making sense.
I think yes. It's making sense when I hear it, because I also hear that there are both sides to it. The one that you feel pretty okay with that choice, and the other aspect also, because if you look at it socially, environmentally, culturally, it's like being a progressive person means this,
Right.
and making choices that don't really fit into that worldview.
Right.
We suddenly feel left out of that. So, and yet,
somehow you're less,
yeah,
for having made that choice.
Yeah.
Or you sold yourself. There's some sense of like you sold yourself short, or you, matlab, even to the point that in the beginning, like, oh, you took up a seat, and somebody else could have had that seat. And I've heard that also. I don't necessarily agree, because the training that I've had contributes to the person that I am and the kind of parent that I've been to my kids, right? So the scientific rigor, the scientific way of thinking, having had those experiences abroad, studying abroad, all of that everything contributes to who I am. So I don't personally see it as a waste, or
Hmm.
yeah. So anyway, but there's that thing, like, and it makes me so mad. It triggers me quite a bit. And I think that triggering part is the part that I haven't resolved for myself. Like, I haven't put it up. Okay, so the other aspect of this is, so now it's been like a long time, and in my personal journey, personal healing journey, that my personal work, and in the groups that I've been over these last 5-6 years, having started TA and like psychodrama, now family constellation work and other forms, everything is boiling down to the inner child healing. Everything. आज जाके सब काम तुम्हारे inner child के wounds पे आके अटक जाता है. So the developing the inner nurturing parent, right?
Hmm.
uh, and then being the nurturing parent to your child. And if you look at it more globally, like the planet needs healing, all of that stuff. So all of that is about unmet needs of the human being. So I feel like actually what Maria Montessori said is like the first 6 years are the single most important. I mean, developmental उसमें तो हमें पता ही है, there's enough research. It's not refutable actually. The first 6 years are the most important time, and if you get good nurturing at that period, you're set, and then you just build upon the foundation, right? But that's the time when, and it's not politically correct to say this, but I feel that that's the time when the child needs the mom or whoever. It doesn't have to be mom necessarily, but uh, a steady nurturing presence, preferably the mother and the father. And that's the time when oftentimes women need to go back to work or whatever. So there's a big discrepancy there. And while I understand that I might have, as a woman, I might have my personal whatever need to fulfill something in the outside world, and that's valid. And of course, I should be there shouldn't be a judgment on that. Shouldn't be a judgment. Okay, there's already a judgment in there, but but you have to think that it's coming at the cost of the child somewhere, and maybe at your own, I don't know. There's some cost that is to be paid, with which the child might have to pay, depending upon what the situation is at home and stuff like that, especially those early years. And I often wonder about that, and I wonder about all of us being at this place in this time on this earth, and what all has gotten missed, that we are
Hmm.
here. And I feel it ties somewhere, it all ties back to that, those first 6 years for all of us.
Yeah. And how, so choosing motherhood, at that point in your life,
Mm.
how was that experience? How did it happen? Like it was like this is what you want, or it was, how did it
Yeah,
sort of, you know?
absolutely.
Hmm.
I remember, like, I was pregnant with Neha, like she was my firstborn, and I was big. Okay, I was huge. So even at 6 months, it was like, oh, it's like due any moment. Now I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, be here 3 minutes. But I used to, I remember getting a compliment from the lady. We were in the US at the time. So I walked into the office to pay the rent check or something, and she complimented me. She said, you're always so happy and radiant, and everything like that. And I remember a school friend, like in college, first or second year, this friend of mine in college had said, I can just imagine you pregnant and very happy, and like, what this, just call me peahen. So you'll be like this peahen, like, and it's true. Both my pregnancies thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoyed the experience of that. I enjoyed being a mom to both my kids. It's been the most rewarding, like, nurturing, nourishing experience. I'm not saying I'm a perfect mom by any means. I don't know if that exists even, but and also the other thing about motherhood is I've enjoyed them being babies. I've enjoyed being pregnant. I've enjoyed them being babies. I've enjoyed them for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. I've heard many women who say, I wish they were babies all the time, but I've never wished that. I've wished for them like to grow, you know, and I've enjoyed every stage of it. Sometimes more, sometimes less, of course, but like overall, yes. And it was a choice. It was a conscious choice. It was, mm, and the kind of parent I was when I first started is a very different kind of parent as I've evolved with the kids. So as the kids grew, then I kept taking care of my own inner child over the years, right? It's still a work in progress. So, but there's always been that thing, and I think like becoming a parent is like having the opportunity to reparent your own inner child as well. It's this gift. So whatever thing got, and I didn't know this in terms of academically, like now that I'm studying the theory around all of this now, but this was the thought I had when uh, when I first became pregnant. Okay, this is going to be my opportunity to get it right, a second chance. So, and women in
Yeah.
leadership, and how do we show up? And I think we were talking about the gap, right? There's this huge gap where young women feel. See, the women leaders are. It's not that we don't have women leaders, because we do, but then they're leaders the same way or similar ways, or they're working within the patriarchal systems, right? So there's not a lot of what does it be to be an embodied, with the feminine aspects of leadership, and that within the system. So where are those women? And those women operate outside of the traditional systems of jobs and work, and they have their own spaces, but they're not necessarily mainstream. So what's been your journey or your experience around that, or your sense or feeling?
I think when I think about it, I like to see whatever that person is doing, are they enjoying themselves doing it? There are a lot
Mm,
of women striving to do this, striving to do that, exhausted, frustrated, um, numbing themselves, uh, reaching success. But I was not very attracted to that model.
mm,
It, I'm like, if we have to be miserable at the end of all of this, then what is the joy in it? Where's the joy? It's a joy killer ride, you know.
mm,
And and at the same time, I think for me, what was important to look at was I look at somebody, okay, what is it about what she does or how she is that she's really um, not just her not just the performative aspect of how she's showing up, but really her own transformative experience of what it means to be in that place or position. How is that person interacting with their own peers now, their own people with whom they have been together for, like, through this journey? How has that, how have those connections changed, evolved, stayed, went on along? So what were they building in the meantime, you know? So, and there is such a huge um, missing of these elements. There is a lot of celebration of success in the form of, okay, these are the achievements and you did it single-handedly and oh great. And then you keep just doing it. You keep
checklist, yeah.
replicating it over and over again.
Mm,
And that was very, I think that was a very, it felt, what it felt like? It felt like mm, scarcity driven way of working, because you always feel
mm,
it's empty. You get something which is supposed
mm,
to make you feel full or fulfilled, But then again, you have to, it's like you again start and then again keep filling it, you know.
Yes,
And
it's the next and the next.
yeah, yeah, you keep driving down
Like
that
a
road.
check. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Uh, and I really like the stories of women that I began to then look around. Okay, lot of them have taken a pause. They're like saying like, cut it. You know, we got to like disrupt this movie that is playing in our lives. You know, how does that cut look like? So what happens after that? So I started to experience women and how they are. So instead of looking at leadership in a corporate capitalist, modernist, feminist, all of these things to put together and creating an image. At the same time, like, okay, who are the disruptors of this? So when the, and what were they creating, you know, because surely if I'm having that question, a lot of us are having that question, no doubt about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just that
Yeah.
those stories are not out there. Yeah.
Mm.
So so one of the big things that I began to see was, okay, a woman's also, where do women start taking breaks? They start taking breaks when some of them either uh, have marriages or have children, you know, and mostly it is at children. I'm like,
Yeah,
how
different
is
stages
motherhood
of
then?
children.
Yes, yeah.
Mm.
So how is that for them? Or some of them disrupt it by saying like, okay, this is not really something that is that is in line with uh, what I feel like doing, you know, or the kind of thing that I would like to create, or so what's happening to that? So I think that's where the whole notion of how to view leadership began to change. So I'm not looking. I stopped looking for that form of leadership which is being sort of drilled down. That, you know, you have this large podium and you stand on that, and then you just mesmerize people, and then you are like some sort of like success. And maybe it is true, but I
Yeah,
am more interested
that's
what
one
happens.
form.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I like to know
Yeah.
what is behind that performance, you know. If a 70-year-old woman is standing over there, then I want to know about the 70 years of her life, not just the 7 minutes. So that is what was more attractive, you know, and how similar those stories then begin to happen. Uh, So I think it took me to places like that. It took me to meeting women who chose different forms of being which felt true to what they would want to do, or even in the space of um, the corporate capitalistic system, even women having a different way of being over there. So they're asking for rights, asking for women rights in form of, okay, you know, pregnancy leaves, mother child care, you know, those are important aspects. Even honoring the fact that, you know, menstruation has has certain implication. It is different for a woman, and people vouching for those rights to be so.
Yeah.
Motherhood, mother care, mother child, it's such a primary
Even
relationship, and how can we cut it off?
harassment. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
And
Changing the dialogue in the workplace. Yeah.
yeah, so
What is
a lot of
kosher
those
and
things.
not okay. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So I think that's where I started to feel that maybe these are the areas. This is the ruffling of the, you know, current paradigm. So I think as soon as I started to interact and meet and be with them, I felt like, yeah, you know, we may not really have a similar sort of we are all forming some sort of an understanding of what it means to really be leaders. Like, and I'm like, how do I see this word leadership? And I was thinking, the ability to lead our life, or the ability to for us to really be led by our life, you know. And it shifts the whole notion of it. You know, right now it is like life is there, and you can just lead it, and or life is there and we can trust, and life leads
Yeah, so I'm
us.
hearing, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's more like about being in harmony with and in tune with where you're at, and then being in balance with your inner world, and your outer world being more in balance is what I'm hearing. There's a harmony. If you're saying let your life lead you, then we're
yeah,
talking about some inner calling or some inner trusting more the inner voice
yes,
versus you're born, you get married at a certain age. I mean, you finish your studies and you get married, you get a job, then you check, like, yeah, you know, whatever, kids, gadi, bakhar, blah 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 blah, retirement fund, holidays, and so on. So it's like it's a prescription which we then try to constantly fit into, versus what is it that I require now, and then creating that almost verse. Yeah. Did I, from what you were saying earlier, right? The, I'm like still stuck there. So you said like women who've created a break, right? You said something like very forcefully, like they've broken this for whatever reason, disrupted. There's this book by this woman called Martha Beck, and it's called Why Women Break Down and How They Put Themselves Together Again. That talks about this exact thing that you're talking about. And I don't know if we've actually mentioned kabhi baat kari hai iske bare mein. I have to give you that book. It's a fantastic book.
ठीक है,
It's,
yeah.
yeah, it's her full research on this idea about women following, and some then it comes to a breaking point, crisis, usually midlife breakdown, and then
Hmm.
they do this thing where they recreate their lives from scratch on their own terms, and supremely powerful at that point. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
reminds me of my mother-in-law. She's one such woman who has just in the last maybe 5 to 7 years, like, you know, she's come into her own, she's making her own decisions and stuff. My father-in-law is always like, oh, she won't listen to me anymore. I'm like, yes. Oh, it's like it's just yeah, it's just like powerful, joyous.
yeah, yeah.
So Akanksha, tell me, where are you seeing these leaders? One of the things that we were talking about was that there aren't very many role models, for because you were working with a group of really young people, right, in their early 20s, and um, there's this vacuum where there aren't women. So yeah, so say
Yeah.
more, speak more to that. Where
You
are
know,
these
I was also
women?
thinking
What is
about it. Yeah, I was
hmm.
also thinking about it. And what I think about is that when we start to look for individuals, and if there are certain kind of individuals which are missing in a structure, then I question the
Hmm.
structure more than the absence of those individuals.
Interesting. Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
तो हाँ, तो ये मिसिंग क्यों है? Because maybe the design needs to be thought of, you know,
Hmm.
because they surely exist out of these designs, you know.
Hmm.
And what I'm
In fact,
liking,
you're right. Yeah, we do meet women such as we're describing, like the whole, like, yeah, the whole person, like, uh, with her femininity and masculinity, yeah, showing up fully embodied, uh, but not in traditional spaces, correct?
yeah, mostly. So like if you go to a conference of different sorts of conferences, you see certain type of people and women over there. Yeah. because that's what brings them together. That is the form, that is the structure, that's the design. So if we are missing, okay, I'm going to this place and I don't feel that, whom can I look up to? Then the question is to see outside of it first. Yeah, I would say like, okay, then maybe I need to turn my focus differently from somewhere else. Also, I also acknowledge this deep sort of a missing link, you know, for a lot of us. It's almost we are born in times uh, where that link has been severed because of whatever might be our own cultural, and historical uh, backgrounds that bring us. That mostly it was the the grandmothers, the mothers, and the daughters who sort of learned some form or way of being from the community care and all of that. Now it is more of
Yeah, so
different
the
kind of
matriarch
systems that we go to.
passing down. Yeah.
Yeah, the and slowly the whole cultural also shifted towards a certain form of um, understanding of power, and we all want power is we all want that somewhere inside of us. So we also sort of get pulled into similar um, positions, and once we go in those positions we don't find what we were looking for. So I look at,
I
that's what
don't
I was
even
thinking.
think that, yeah, I do, sorry, I don't even
Hmm.
think, sorry, I know I'm jumping in, but I don't even
That's
think
okay, huh?
we know that we're missing it. Yeah. I don't even think that we know what we're missing.
Hmm.
So we go into
There
these
is
structures,
just,
you said, and then we're missing this. There's just a sense or a longing or a, and वो भी इतना कुछ awareness में नहीं रहता is what I feel. This is my experience. There's a sense that something's not right for sure. You have a sense that something's not fitting, aligning, and I think the more common narrative or the more common thought around all of this is मुझ में ही कुछ गलती होगी क्योंकि मैं fit in नहीं कर रही हूँ. Right? Nobody,
yeah.
very few of us question the system, or we question the larger narrative into which we're not fitting, no matter how hard we try. It's almost like having one foot in one boat and one foot in the other boat, and they're both going in different. So there's no way you can actually bridge it. And yet there's this constant struggle ki kyun nahi, like, what is wrong with me, or so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there also comes the power of, I think, the question of personal power. What stops us from
That's a
getting
million
in
dollar
touch
question.
with that? Yeah.
Mm.
So places, positions, leadership, and power, they're also intertwined with each other.
Mm.
And yet, um, and yet we see maybe there's a slight difference on how motherhood is powerful, or let's say somebody
Mm.
who's creating something which is much more which is not seen as so much of value, like like today's times, yeah, when the whole world is hit by this crisis, suddenly there is such a value of people offering emotional support. Yeah,
Mm.
suddenly. But
Yep.
otherwise
Yep.
nobody
Yep.
care,
Yep.
like yeah. So it's sort of, we work in like marginalized professions, good to have stuff, yeah, but it's suddenly on the center stage also. So I think most of the work that where
That
you
is.
can see.
That is. Yeah. Wow. I hadn't thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. Suddenly, the care of the individual or the inner life of our inner lives are suddenly, like you said, center stage.
Yes, What do we fall back on when we are hit by uncertainty, when we see the work that promised us stability and unshaken belief that it's going to God knows what. Like sometimes I feel like what utopian dreams it sort of made people think that it's very fragile. This whole system is very, very, very fragile. It just dropped so quickly, and
It
the
did.
effects of it,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so in those times, to be cooped, to be cooped inside our own small safety nets, whoever has it, a lot of us have it. How do you define what is leading your day-to-day life in those moments? You know, and now when the center of the world has shifted from outside to very much inside, to very much from professional spaces to personal spaces, you know, so much from networked ways of community building to really looking at connections and
Yeah, in your inner
connections,
circle.
relationships. Yes, yes. It has brought us closer to all of that. Now, how does the definition of um, leadership showing up in these spaces? You know, um, and who are the and how do and I see like women have led these spaces for a long time. They were mostly there, a lot of them, you know. And I think that they have added it has added to their already pile of work.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
So now
uh,
having to manage the kids at home and the husband at home, you mean like that, or?
yeah, the dynamic of the space has suddenly changed now,
Yeah,
you know.
sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. and
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot.
and she is the only one who had sort of had some control and some sense of it, because even if the woman is working outside or inside, but she seems to have a more or less much more closer relationship with the with her surroundings, with her family or community or things like that. Um,
I think the reason for that is women have
hmm,
a wider, sorry again, the reason that is because women have permissions for a wider range experiencing, expressing, um, right, a wider range of feelings
yeah.
compared to men. That's what
Hmm. Yeah. I think there are less judgments on that part for them. Could be.
mm,
Could be.
could be,
Uh,
could be.
yes. Could
Yeah, it's
be. Yeah.
one
Yeah.
possible explanation. Yeah.
Because I see a lot of handy fathers also, but they're like surely the exceptions. I can't really say the norm. Yeah.
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 I see in the
Uh,
work that I do in the spaces I occupy, there are a lot more men who have this wide
hmm.
repertoire of feelings. They're not afraid to feel those feelings, express those feelings, allow others, give permissions to others to express and feel. But by and large, if you paint a very broad brushstroke, the only feeling permitted by the patriarchal systems or the current systems is anger, right? So everything is I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm afraid, I'm angry, I'm blah blah blah, I'm embarrassed, I'm angry, I'm hungry, I'm angry. Just saying, like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
very handicapping as an individual. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah,
also, yeah,
sorry, you were
feel
saying.
that. No, no, no. Sorry for that. So what I was trying to connect it with was that how do we take this, what is happening right now, and the focus being
Mm,
shifted to personal and and this into the world, you know, how does
Mm.
this so
Translate
if
back into, yeah.
into that, yeah. So it's not that we don't, we do. So what is it then just stops us? Because I think what happens when we go into the world as the main frame or the dominant framework of the world, we start suddenly to question our own selves. Yeah, and that's
Mm.
when we get into the feeling of, oh, maybe I don't get this, or maybe it's not enough, or maybe this, or maybe that. So
Yes, self-doubt.
how
You
to then
question yourself rather
uh,
than the system.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, like, have you had those moments where you've gone to that point, and how did it feel like, you know, um,
Mm.
take this, translate
Mm.
this into your experiences on the world stage, um,
The
or
first or the
even otherwise,
second?
yeah. Both the
So
journeys, maybe you can pick.
yeah, so the first one is where I have a certain knowing about what I would like and want. And then I step into, so me as an individual, I interface with the world, and the world tells me that I'm not right, or that my thinking is not right, or there's not enough support, and I don't have internal potency yet, right? So part, so then I don't have it within me, and I'm not receiving it from outside. So then there's a sense of I'm not okay. So I've had that experience during my PhD, right? So I didn't want to, I didn't actually want to be a scientist, but somehow the systems around me or whatever it was, I got kind of persuaded to follow that path, and it wasn't the right path for me. And though I'm grateful for the learnings and the experience and all this, so whatever happened, that's fine. I'm using all of that now, but it wasn't my chosen path. So all of that was extremely challenging and difficult, right? So it was just this thing where I'm like constantly questioning myself, ki, what's wrong with me, I'm not good enough, and many versions of that over many years. Then the journey began back to coming back to me, which is what you were talking about now, that this COVID crisis has kind of precipitated. Now we're all at home, we're getting in touch with what's most important, right? Job, ये वो सब था, अब वो सब तो at least temporarily तो नहीं है. So what it does, it strip it down to its bare bones, जिसे बोलेंगे, right? So now we're in touch with all of that, and now the second part of your question is, when you take this back into the world, how do you then? So that part of my journey. So the COVID crisis hasn't precipitated that for me personally, because my life before and after is or the life of my family is very similar, right? With very few changes, and they're not disruptive changes for us as a family. They're like, okay, we're just taking it in our stride. Um, that journey for me has been what I was describing earlier about the book, to recreate something for myself that is defined internally for me. I define what feels right and not right for me. And I have developed potency within me to stand strong and say, no, this is it for me. Dunya mein jo bhi ho raha hoga, but that doesn't fit for me anymore. Part of the struggle has been how to do it graciously, right? Because there's this sense, one of the things that I've been trying to sidestep, and I had a lot of it as a young person, right? The sense of self-righteousness, the right and wrong, ye galat hai, ye sahi hai, aise nahi hona chahiye, this is not fair, right? So now this, in the second half of this journey, has been around developing personal power, personal potency, and to do it graciously without, not that it doesn't happen, I won't say it doesn't ever happen, and some of it is happening subconsciously out of my awareness and all of that stuff, but the desire is to do it with grace. And it's almost like, so now I interface, and this is part of this is hugely, I mean, I was developing it by myself, but then the last year or so, or a little bit more than a year, that you and I have been working together, it has been a huge part of the articulation of it, the putting it out in words and concretizing it, right? Once it is said in a spoken space between us, then it's there, manifested in my world, in my reality. And that has been the creation of this other design that has been very fine tuned to my what I would like. So for example, sometimes I'll get offers from corporates to do work with them, and somehow I'm not fully understanding, but somehow मुझे वो जमता नहीं है, क्योंकि काफी चेकलिस्ट मेंटालिटी रहती है, and मुझे अपने आप को थोड़ा सा लिमिट करना पड़ता है, या थोड़ा बॉक्स करना पड़ता है, या I have to show up like this, I have to dress like this, I have to speak like this. And so it doesn't work for me at a personal level. I have a resistance to that. Not that I'm saying that it's bad or good, or I'm bad, they're good, I'm bad, none of that, but it doesn't work for me in how I want to work with people. uh, so in the beginning, when I would get that kind of work, and sometimes I would say yes, and sometimes I would say no, either way it was a struggle, कि मुझे तो हाँ कहना चाहिए था, ये तो बहुत अच्छा काम था, ये तो बहुत अच्छे पैसे थे, मैंने मना कर दिया, that means मैं ही कुछ गड़बड़ हूँ, मतलब मैं I'm not up to it. Or if I went and did it and felt shitty, or I didn't feel like I was smart enough, or whatever, like, that was another struggle. But now, with this new, so that was like before, now it's like, okay, what makes sense for me to do without judging or berating myself or saying that the system is wrong. If it makes sense, I do it. If it doesn't make sense, I don't do it. But there's a very minute by minute, moment by moment checking in with myself कि क्या है क्या नहीं है, क्या कहाँ मुझे वो सही लग रहा है, पुल है तो यस, नहीं लग रहा है तो स्टॉप, चेक, फिर कहीं और जाना तो कहीं और. So there's this I don't know how to describe it. It's this beautiful thing, and it's something that has gotten solidified in your and my conversations. And if you want to contribute, please go ahead, because I know exactly, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we have it almost up to an hour, just flagging.
Okay. So yeah, how are you? I think I'm listening to all of this, and I feel like we're just somehow um, acknowledging some of our own experiences, and connecting them through our journey, from back then to here. Um, and that itself, I feel, is the most powerful way to be in these times. That our lives are full of these uncertainties, moments of confusion, and yet what you talked about, like, you know how to how to be through them graciously, is what we sort of we envision it, and how it sort of unfolds. So to be to somewhere uh, sharing those bits. So
Yeah,
yeah,
the bad and the ugly. Yeah,
yeah.
good.
I mean, yes. I think that's a more real, real check of how how it all culminates than in any, not like a magic fairy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 2 feet on the ground. Yeah.
How are
How
you?
are you feeling? I'm in a
I
good
think it's a
space.
great
I'm
starter.
like,
Yeah. Hmm.
how are you doing?
I'm just enthusiastic of where all it can lead. You know. Yeah, that's what I feel. I think I feel much more enthusiastic in having these conversations, and there is also a sense of you know not being alone in it. Yeah, yeah, and it's not so much for the answers or who are those people, but really how we are showing up for ourselves in our lives, and maybe that's all to offer at this point is what I feel. You know, yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's what.
that's most certainly been experienced. Yeah. It
Yeah.
just yeah, so I'm really yeah, completely resonate with that, because as even as you were talking, I'm thinking to myself, like, it's about me finding a mirroring of my very personal struggles and experiences in another. कि भैया तू पागल नहीं है, मतलब हाँ सही बोल रही है, like, you know, or I have a similar thought or experience. Like, just that resonance itself has been such a powerful grounding force for me.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah.
And I think part of what we're trying to co-create here is this kind of experience for a larger maybe number of women, um, to find that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. That's
uh, on that note,
on that note, we shall meet soon again.
again, yes.
Okay.
Okay.